Hey there, guys. Welcome back to the African Mavericks Podcast. I'm your host, Ebuka Nwana. And over here, what we're trying to do is promote independent thinking and purposeful living amongst young Africans. Now, if those values resonate with you, please stick around, because on today's episode, I had the privilege of chatting with Diana Muturia. Diana's story is nothing short of inspiring. Imagine having to move to the US all by yourself at the age of 18, and then facing challenges in your studies that force you to drop out of college. As a dropout to pick up a cleaning job, you then turn that experience into building a groundbreaking tech platform that's revolutionizing the cleaning industry. Pretty interesting and inspiring, right? Well, in our conversation today, we dive deep into Diana's unique experiences, the highs and lows that she faced, and how she's been able to maintain her vision against all odds. We also discussed the power of resilience, her take on what it means to live with purpose, and why she thinks independent thinking is crucial. This episode is packed with insights and inspiration that I feel you would value. So let's dive right in, learn from Diana Muturia.
Okay, Diana, thank you so much for agreeing to have this conversation with me. Usually I am the one that reaches out to Mavericks, but you were the one that reached out to me, and I think it's just testament of who you are as a person and where you are in the stage of, your life's journey, which we'll get into in a second. But thank you for having this time with me.
Yeah, no problem.
So I'd like to start by asking you to share, a bit of your background story and how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, I came to the US when I was 18 years old by myself. And I came to study math and mechanical engineering. And I did fairly well in school until the very last year, where my new math advisor said that I don't seem to look like an engineer. I was the only Black student in that class, and also only the African student, African immigrant in that class. So it took me a long time when I was a dropout to really realize what that meant, because it didn't make sense to me. I turned into cleaning, and I was starting to clean people's houses to put food on the table. And eventually I got pulled into the cleaners world, and I got to see the challenges that cleaners have, the messiness of being in the cleaning business. And I said, I'm going to do something about it. So I said, listen, I don't have anything to lose. I'm a college dropout away from home. I'm just going to learn how to code and do it myself. And before that, I used contractors, and it did not work out. Actually, I used contractors 4 years in a row, and that did not work out. So in the pandemic, I sat down, I learned how to code. I built the very first clunky app, but it worked, and it helped me understand what type of developers I need in my team. So long story short, we're in V3 right now, have amazing developers from Kenya who've stuck with me for the past 3 to 4 years. And we're in 18 cities. And so very, very excited about what is the next step for us. I think we've achieved so much at a pre-seed stage. And I'm hoping that we're able to close our round even during this economy.
It's very interesting to hear that. I'm also a mechanical engineering graduate. I studied engineering in college, mechanical engineering to be exact. It's quite unfortunate what happened to you. I can't imagine if that happened to me, because I was one of the only Black students in my class as well, here in Texas, UTA. So yeah, it would have been a big hit for me. But it's interesting to hear how you turned that into, what I say, lemonades. Let me put it that way. You took the lemons and turned it to lemonades. But I would like you to go maybe a bit back. You started the story at 18. Can you go back maybe to your childhood and some pivotal moments that gave you the courage to come to the States at 18 years old by yourself?
Yeah, it was actually not my choice. We both have African parents. What they say is what is religion. And so my mom just said, "You're going to the US and you're going today." And that was it. So I had no choice. In fact, it was to a point where like she was forcing me to study some specific things. And, you know, it's in our culture to, especially for our parents, to like force us to be engineers or doctors or lawyers. And so that wasn't really my choice. But at the end of the day, I'm really grateful to be here. I think no matter how things turned, I think I've learned so much that I think would help other people and would impact other people. And you know, a little bit about my childhood. I lived in the farm. I grew up in the farm. I grew up with cows and chicken, and it was like 20 dogs at the same time. It was really a wonderful time of my life. I wouldn't say my childhood was the best, and I hope this is not going to be like a downer episode for you.
Not at all. Not at all. Actually, if I would say it's been the most, would I say, interesting so far, because I've not had anyone that grew up on a farm. So.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. My dad was in politics, and he fought for independence when he was 18, and my mom was a teacher. And they tried a lot of things, especially in business. They opened a pharmacy at one point. They tried to open like a little restaurant. They tried a lot of things. I would say they were very ambitious, especially from both of them who came from very humble backgrounds. I would say that I picked up so many things from them, especially the resilient part. But it also, I saw a lot of turmoil and a lot of trauma-inducing situations, you know. Like my mom, she went just from being a teacher to a principal to running her own business college. And I could see how her as a woman with that amount of eyeballs on her was perceived as way too powerful for the society that she was living in, and it was very difficult for her. So that was something that, you know, it kind of skewed me a little bit in how I view the world. But I would say, yeah, I always joke around and say we were raised by wolves because of how hard that raising was. You know, it wasn't loving and, you know, oh, my baby and this, and, you know, don't worry, you know, wipe your tears, I'm here for you. It was not that way. It was very hard. It did build us, and that's how our parents thought was the best way. But it was some things that, you know, I had to talk through in therapy and understand.
That's interesting. And thank you for being vulnerable by sharing that. Just listening to you, it seems like your parents were strong influences on your life. Would you say they were the most influential? And if not, who would you ascribe as the most influential mentors or influences you've had in your life?
Yeah, I would definitely say my parents were very influential in many ways. I think I picked up on a few things too here in the US, but once I went through therapy and I went back home and seeing how my parents like respond to things and how they work and how, you know, even how like my dad scratches his hand when he's thinking or anything of that sort that I really didn't understand about myself. I saw that in them, how they respond to something that is stressful. We're doing exactly the same thing, and it kind of like showed me like, yeah, they definitely have a very big influence on how I operate as an adult. But other than that, here in the US, I would say a big influence has been the people who have believed in us as a startup. One of the investors, our very first investor, Bracken Darrell, he was the CEO of Logitech. And it's actually a really interesting story. We were in a call where he was a guest and he was speaking. And there were all these business guys who are well established, obviously older than I was. And I'm hearing this little girl and everyone's asking these big questions. And Bracken just does not have the answers and he doesn't want to have the answers. And so people get frustrated in the call. And I said, you know what, I'm gonna just like ask a very simple question. I'm not on everybody's level, but I'm gonna ask the question anyway. I can't remember what it was, but I think that was the only question that he actually took time to answer. And he made sure to let the audience know that you can't ask me engineering questions. You can't ask me tech questions. You can't ask me legal questions. I'm a CEO. I'm not a CFO. I'm not a CLO, like all these things. And so I just kind of followed that and said, okay, this is just my part where I'm at. Can I ask this question? And he ended up being our first investor. And that really changed a lot for us because at that time, when we were building, everyone was telling us no. Everyone was telling us it's impossible. Everyone was like picking us apart. And we definitely knew it was something to do with where we come from because there were other startups that were not as strong, but they were catching up to getting confidence from the same investors or potential investors that were skipping us. So Bracken having the confidence to invest in us and like write the first check was phenomenal. It really like skyrocketed our confidence. I believe that's one of the reasons why we felt like we can get into, AWS Accelerator and Techstars because that one person believed in us and it made all the difference.
That's beautiful to hear. It seems to me that you're someone that has faced a lot of challenges, just the ones you shared so far. I'm sure there's more. If we open that, if you went down that road, we'll find more challenges. But can you share is there like a process you use in handling challenges? And yeah, is there a process you have when you face with challenges, and how do you go about handling?
Oh, that's an amazing question. If I can be even more vulnerable, I recommend for founders to find therapy that's affordable and also do a mental assessment to really know how your brain works. I think if you understand how your brain works, it makes everything so much easier. You'll notice when you're having a moment and it's not going to ruin your entire day. You're going to be like, oh, okay, I'm having a moment. And that's okay. Okay, I'm going to give myself that moment. What do I need to do? What are my tools? Okay, do I need to meditate right now? Does this moment require me to go outside and have a walk? Does this moment require me to, talk to someone? Whatever that is. I think understanding first how your brain works is like the fundamental first step of self-awareness as a founder.
All right. That's interesting. You've mentioned therapy 3 times so far. It seems like that has been a very valuable, part of your journey so far.
It has. I think that's the one that helped me make some breakthroughs in my life for sure. Because sometimes we don't see what we do that's holding us back until someone else like mentions it. And not everyone has the tools, so we go to professionals for that, right? I would say that has been the biggest impact. I don't think I would have made this progress without having a professional who I can call also my friend and is wanting the best for me and upfront with me. It's almost like a personal mentor that has nothing to do with business. They don't care about, what if your company's like up and on the right, they care about you as a person. And that's really important for everyone to have.
I completely agree with you. I say this when I'm having conversations with my African friends. It's like I feel like every African in my generation needs to go to therapy, even though I haven't been to therapy yet. But my excuse is that I've done a lot of, mindful practices. I went through a yoga teacher training, 200-hour yoga teacher training course. I felt that was therapeutic for me, because it brought to the forefront some of the things that I was running away from. Um, but yeah, I just wanted to mention that to support your argument that we all need therapy, or not we all need, but a lot of us need therapy,
Yeah.
especially Africans in our generation.
Yeah, I agree. Um, Especially like being away from home, that really, it shakes your identity. We don't have the same uh, life as our African sisters and brothers who are back home. They get to be grounded and have their culture and have their family around. And not all of us have all our family here. We have to navigate a world that is completely new in our adult life. It's important to get some professional help to help with like what are some of those things that we've internalized that it was out of survival and now we have to let go of that in order to move forward.
Yeah, yeah. I would say even people back home, even the
Oh yeah.
because that's where it all starts. And it's you mentioned survival, like most of our parents, that was the mode that they were operating on from you know the moment they were born even to now. They're still in survival mode, and
Yeah.
that has passed on to they've passed on that, would I say, mentality to
Hmm.
most of us. And I think we're in a different time where it's not really all about survival, even though back home, because of the way things are back home, people still have to have survival at the forefront of their minds. But
Yeah.
yeah, I say that to say it's not just us that are here, even us back home, our brothers and sisters back home need.
Yeah. uh that's so true.
So before I get into the next set of questions, just wanted to give some context which I haven't given. My apologies. So the African Mavericks platform, basically was the intent is to promote purposeful living and independent thinking amongst young Africans. You know, just from your story, that's something I feel you are doing. Um, you seem to be someone that thinks independently. Um, so the next set of questions I want to ask around that. What would you define living purposefully as?
I think as long as you're working in your light, you're living purposefully. And sometimes I don't want to say, because this is something I've also heard, is if you're living in your purpose, it's going to be easier. Life is easier. No, it's not. I don't think Nelson Mandela would say the same thing. He definitely lived in his purpose, but he had a very hard life. Uh, so I would say as long as you're working in your light. So maybe the next question would be, what actually is working in your light? You have to understand if something is, you feel very strong about something and you feel that you have to work on something, like, for example, if it's a business or if it's a charity or whatever it is, and you really strongly feel about it, that's your first intuition of where you're supposed to be working in your light. Working in your light is actually harder than not. It's easy to numb your brain and do just regular work, a regular 9 to 5, which is nothing bad with it. People absolutely love their 9 to 5s. There's some who do. But you can definitely tell if you are like, you're feeling like you're dying inside. That's, I think that's the best way to put it. Yeah, I would say living purposefully is understanding, like, when you're working in your light, how do you feel about it? Do you feel like you're making an impact? Do you feel that it's changing things? That's how I would say working purposefully is.
I love that answer, and thank you for shedding more light on what you mean by living your life. Because I was definitely going to ask that for you to shed more light on that. You also mentioned how when you're walking in your light, it comes with a lot of challenges, right? So, what would you say? First of all, if I ask this question, would you say you're currently walking in your life?
I would say so.
Okay. So
Yeah.
that means I presume that comes with a lot of challenges, right?
Yeah, it definitely does. Working in your light is first off, like you have to work on yourself. That may be part of the first few steps of working in your light. And sometimes that can have people pushing back. Yeah. So if let's say I'm just gonna give an example of myself. Let's say I have this group of friends, the friends I've known since I came to the US. I'm finally like working through some of the things I want to work through, and I'm getting a breakthrough in something. Sometimes that can trigger friction in friendships. You know, it can make other people intimidated. It can, whatever the case is, that can be a challenge. Sometimes working your light, you may find the problem is actually bigger than what you expect, and you have to work through that as well. So it doesn't have to be a relationship thing. It can also be the problem itself, and realizing like I have to, I have to drop my imposter syndrome so I can ask for help. I have to work on my ego so I can listen when I get advice. I have to build a skill so that I can teach the next person and we can expand. So those are some of the challenges in working in your light. It requires you to continuously be better, and that's a very uncomfortable process.
I love that answer. I love that answer. I also love how you mentioned the imposter syndrome, and learning a skill, because I think those are three. Obviously, there are other areas, but I think when it comes to working on yourself, those are three things that actually are very critical in living purposefully. For my personal journey so far, um, dealing with your ego, which seems to be a very insidious thing, um, know when it shows up and all that good stuff. It's
Yeah.
one. It's something I believe I'm still struggling, being challenged by. I wouldn't say struggle, being challenged by today. And it's glad to hear that someone else has that. You um, is aware of that as well. So let me ask, what drives you to keep going when you're faced with these challenges? What drives you to keep going? And how do you align your daily actions with this larger purpose of living in your life?
Um, that's a good question. I hate motivation. I think it never works. Um, I'm very I think at this point of my startup, I really don't have a specific like motivational drive. I just do it because it has to be done. Um, I think being emotionally attached to something is like, from my experience, it's a definitely a driver to failure, and not the good kind where you learn something. um, so I'm not emotionally attached to any solution, any technology, uh, any association of like an organization. I'm just not emotionally attached to it. However, the problem needs to be solved. It needs to be solved. If someone's life is completely changed because of it, that's awesome. That proves that it was worth it. If someone says, "Oh, that makes my life easier for the day," that's okay too. Uh, but I don't have anything that motivates me to continue going. I just know that it's just work that has to be done.
Beautiful. um, I found that beautiful because on my drive here this morning, I was reminded of a quote. Before I say that, let me share that I'm a recovering self-help addict. So I can completely understand you when you say this, like motivation is, you don't really care about motivation. You care about what needs to be done and getting that done. And it made, your answer made me think of a thought I had this morning about my favorite quote on success. Um, you've probably heard it before, but it goes, success is the steady progression towards a worthy ideal. So I was just meditating on that this morning, and what I came to was it really doesn't matter what the outcome is. Why I buy into that definition of success is that it really doesn't matter what the outcome is. Yes, you've defined what an end goal that you're a worthy ideal that you're working towards. Now it's about the steady progression, the steady progression towards that, and that just aligns with what you said. The steady progression meaning what needs to be done today. We need to do that. Let's get it done.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, I would say I'm on the same page of like the self-help junkie. I was definitely that. And like I think also like some of the progress I've made in my career and my startup has been dropping those self-help books and focusing on books that have the solution to the problem you have right now. So if you have a problem with product, if you can't get your product off the ground, read the Phoenix Project. If you have a problem with leadership, you notice that your team does not really respect you, they're not listening, they're trying to get out of work, they don't enjoy being around you, read the multipliers, see what type of leader you are. If you notice that, you know, maybe 2-3 people have mentioned that you're maybe like way overly sensitive in what people say, read the Letters of the Stoic. Whatever the problem you have right now is what you need to be reading for. There's always a solution in that book. I would want to say, even going further, that you're going to find the solution in the book, but when you read it the second time, you find something within yourself. So I would obviously, definitely drop the self-help books, the motivational you know, tracks on Spotify or Apple Music, whatever you're using, and look at what your problem is right now. I don't know how to do my finances. I promise you there are resources for that, and you don't need motivational videos or music to help you through that. You can definitely sit down, put a Excel sheet together, and there are a bunch of resources that will help you with it. Yeah, I think I went a little bit on a rant there, but hopefully that answered the question.
Well, very insightful rant. And something I picked up from that was when you read a book the first time, you learn about the solution. When you read it the second time, you learn something about yourself.
Yeah.
I completely agree with that. And the reason being, you know, I had this whole vanity metric of how many books I wanted to read a year. You know, let me read the most books. And I'm coming to find that the books I actually go back to and read are the ones that bring some kind of change in who I am as a person. Those are the ones I find something that really resonates with me that I missed the first time I was reading. So yeah, I wanted to highlight that again because I think that was a beautiful point made.
I appreciate that. I've learned something from you too. That's awesome.
Thank you. So independent thinking. When you hear that, what do you think about that?
About, say that one more time.
Independent thinking.
Independent thinking.
Yeah.
This is awesome. This reminds me of a conversation I had the other day with someone who I truly care about, and we just had a disagreement about some things that I just felt that, like, you should obviously know this, but they gave information that made me stop on my tracks and say, maybe I need to know your point of view. I would say independent thinking is understanding that there are always two stories. You can't, you know, like Chimamanda always says, there's a danger to a one-sided story. So I always lead with like an eye of, I always lead in a way of saying, okay, let me get that information. let me look at other sources of information, and then I'll make the decision based on my intuition and the amount of data that I have. And sometimes you're not going to get all the information. I always say, listen to your intuition first. The data is going to come in later. You can't just have all the data that you need, right? You can walk into a room of investors that you think this is going to be a great deal, they're going to be a great partner, and something just feels off. You obviously don't have the data at that point, but if you trust your intuition, say, you know what, I need to take a beat on this. And then later, the news breaks out, or someone approaches you and tells you, guess what happened with this investors, or you had a bad deal, or whatever the case is. You may not have the information right away, but definitely always trust your intuition. But I think that's how I would frame independent thinking.
I find that interesting. And the reason being is, so when this idea, I got the download of this idea, right?
Yeah.
To me, independent thinking is not what. My perspective of that is shifting based on the conversations I've had so far with fellow Mavericks. I had this idea, and I think maybe it was a trauma response, just thinking about it, where independent thinking has to go against the grain. And it's something that comes from the individual, right? But I'm coming to realize, even from the second to last guest I had, she said in response to that question, she was like, first of all, you have to get the data before you can get to a place where you have an independent thought about any particular thing. And I think you just mentioned that as well, where you said you have to listen to your intuition first, then the data comes in second. So it's considering in thinking independently, my perspective is shifting to appreciating the environment I'm in and the data I'm getting from that environment. Mm-hmm. You know, and that would now lead to an independent thought about whatever it is.
Yeah,
so it's interesting so far for me, particularly because my perspective is shifting.
Yeah, you know, sometimes you get new information and we're like, holy shit. How did I miss this? How was I walking around this earth having this information, right? Like, you know, having a certain belief or whatever the case is. I think, like, yeah, the listening to your intuition first is massive, because we're not going to have all the data on our fingertips, even though we have all this technology to help us. There are some situations where we just have to take a moment and listen to ourselves. And then that information is going to follow later. Yeah.
Lovely. So how do you, I presume you think independently just from the conversation we've had so far. I would say that again, because I'm really getting that vibe from you. So how do you cultivate that in yourself and in maybe your immediate team and the people around you?
I ask a lot of questions. A lot of questions. If we can get a little bit into a little bit of a rabbit hole. So I brought my team to the US. I brought them to Austin to go through the Techstars program with me. And they were massively excited. I mean, every day was like heaven to them. And this time when we were driving back, we were all staying in one Airbnb. So we were driving back and they were like, you know, hey, look at all this like infrastructure. You know, Kenya is getting there too. Like we have this super highway and all of these things, right? And I asked, why? Why is it now? Well, because the president, you know, made a deal with China and okay, but who? So I asked more and more questions, right? So we realized that the government was struck a deal with a Chinese company, but that Chinese company is funded by the CCP. And they looked at the debt that we have and how long it's going to cover that debt and how long that's going to be. And they thought just paying for the freeway, you know, when you pay the toll is going to cover it. No, it's not. So like that was a big, that was like a moment where I could tell like there was a sense of hopelessness in that moment. but it did make them sharper of like not just thinking things are just going to be, and really understanding how that process came together. That was a really good exercise. So after that, asking questions, you know, if they read something in a book, it's not, oh, it has to be that way because it's in the book. No. You have to look at it and say, is it working for us? Is that something that we want to use? So just having conversations about like, why is that happening? Why do you believe that? Why do you choose to do that? Is a really good way of having independent thinking.
Really be a great leader. Can you give an example of a time where an independent thought led to a unique solution or an innovative solution? And let's take, I'm sure you're probably going to talk about Clyn, but if you could get personal here, I would appreciate that.
Okay. Let's see. Oh, I got tons. Okay. Okay, let me start with Clyn, I guess, because this is all everything in my life. So when we started Clyn, everyone was saying the Uber of this, the Uber of that, and we avoided that for a long time. Even when we were explaining it, and someone says, "Oh, like the Uber of cleaners," I would say, "No, it's not." Because a lot of trends are showing, and I think this is what I'm trying to explain is when there's a trend and you're hearing something so much, I always look at the opposite direction. I personally think that when you hear something is a trend, it's at the tail end of it. Because you're the last people to hear about it. So if the trend right now is AI, we've seen as soon as it was a trend, there were all these AI startups that were starting. And then when ChatGPT put out a release, almost 80% of those AI startups, the valuation became zero. So I think like looking at trends makes me understand that that's the tail end of something. I need to look at something else. I need to go the opposite direction. I need to find something that's underlying. Why is it being put as a trend? I think that's how I kind of just like, that's how I see things. If it reaches mainstream media, it's on the very last bit of it. So yeah, that's how I look at it.
So how do you, what was the in opposition to the Uber for cleaners, how do you describe Clyn?
I describe Clyn as a platform that helps you find high quality cleaning services, and at the same time we automate the most stressful parts of the cleaner's business. We just don't do the one-offs and the like, oh, I'm gonna click a button and a cleaning person is gonna show up and they're gonna clean and that's it. Obviously the consumer wants that, the end user wants that, and that's what we do for them. But we do so much more for the cleaning business. There's so much mess between the lead that they just get and the work being done. And we're just bringing in a lot more harmony right there in the middle, which is our main business model. So the part of you getting a cleaner really quickly in 24 hours, affordably, high quality, that's like an after thing. That's like yeah, it's good to have because we're bringing in business for the cleaning businesses. But our main part is to help cleaning businesses scale. 90% of cleaning businesses don't even hit the $1 million revenue. And so we're hoping that our technology helps them do that by gaining more business without having to staff more people or have this messy journey through that.
Interesting. So if I understand you well, the focus is, yes, you aim to serve the customer where they get easy access to cleaners, right?
Yeah.
Whenever they need. But the focus is, in order to do that, you guys are focusing on the back end. That's the cleaning businesses, and making things simpler for them.
Yeah.
So that the customer can get them whenever they need.
Yeah.
Okay.
So for example, if you have a cleaning business in Austin and you have, let's say, 2 cleaners, and you realize this money is not efficient and it's not helping me for these 2 cleaners, I need to get more jobs. You can definitely use the application, but the beautiful thing about the application is it's made and built for volume. So it automates so much of it that if you decide to bring in another cleaner and, let's say, start taking in jobs from a realtor or a property management company, you're not feeling overwhelmed. You're not scrambling to figure out how to maintain all this other new business. You just need to figure out how many cleaners do I have and can I have the capacity for it, rather than trying to figure out all the logistics in between.
Okay. Logistics, like, if I'm just thinking, like, what kind of logistics? Is it the marketing aspect of it? Is it the generating the leads aspect of it? Like, if you don't mind sharing.
Yeah, it's the generating the leads and managing those leads. So usually how cleaning businesses contact you is you're probably going to see a marketing media piece. If it's an ad, if it's SEO, or they put a pamphlet at your door and you call them, it's probably a business phone number connected to a personal number. They have to get your information. You have to go back and forth. And then they have to come see your house to make sure if they can do the job. They have to call their cleaners to see their schedule. And then if the cleaners are not responding in time, they may lose you as a customer. There's like so much that happens in between. They still have to stay in communication with you. And if it doesn't work out, let's say you find another cleaner, they have to continuously market to you. So we automate all of that. And all they need to worry about is get the cleaner to your house. So, adding your information for your house, we use our algorithm to know how much that's going to cost based on your square footage and the numbers of bedrooms that you have in bathrooms, and even if you have like pets. And then we also automate the status of it, so you can communicate with the cleaning manager of, let's say, Austin. You can also communicate with the cleaner. The status of it when it's changing from when they're on their way. You'll know when they're on their way. You'll know when they arrived. You'll know when the progress in the cleaning. Let's say you're a realtor and you don't have time to be in that place or that property when it's done. And then paying is also automatic. As soon as it's complete, they get paid. You rate them, and that's it. Now, what we're excited about is next year we just closed a partnership with IBM. So we're automating even more of that process, all the way till the cleaners on boots on the ground. So that's something we're really excited about.
Congratulations on the partnership with IBM. And
thank you.
Thanks for giving more context, because now I understand you guys are more than just an Uber of cleaners.
That was a long-winded answer, but yeah.
Yeah, this is not a pitch, so it's okay to give details and stuff like that. So, let's go into some insights and lessons you've learned over time. What would you say the most valuable lesson you've learned on your journey is, as a founder and as someone walking in a life on a personal level?
The most valuable lesson. I would say there's so many mentors. There's so many mentors, but not enough sponsors.
Can you shed more light on that?
Everyone is just trying to mentor. Everyone's trying to mentor. Everyone's trying to give you 2 cents about where you should go, how you should do it. But sponsors should be advocating for you. They should be talking in rooms that you can't get into yet. Those are the ones who are important. There's a book also called Don't Get a Mentor, Get a Sponsor. I'll definitely read that. And I think the most impactful people in my life have been people who advocated for me in buildings that I didn't walk in yet. But everyone has an opinion about your business.
Yeah.
But not everyone is going to say, hey, I think you should check out Ebuka. I think what he's doing is amazing. I think you should have a conversation with him. Or I think you should be part of this cohort. Or I think you should invest in him. Or I think you should introduce him to this organization, you know, or I think you should bring him to be a speaker at this event. Those are the type of people you need.
I'm writing that down because that resonated deeply with me. So earlier I mentioned how my perspective on thinking independently is shifting. Let me now ask you that question. How is your perspective on something you strongly believed in? How is that shifted, or how is it shifting based on your experiences so far?
But it can talk on a woman's perspective. I think, you know, as young girls, we were taught to have specific dreams around marriage, around kids. That significantly shifted, and it's amazing to have, but a family doesn't have to look like what society wants it to look like. I think society has struggled with that for a long time. But yeah, that's something that has definitely shifted. Also, I used to have a very I would say hopeful mentality all the time. And that has shifted, and probably it's because of the season in my life. But I always look at everything as like a chess play instead of like, oh, look, this organization is helping us. Amazing. I always look at it as a chess play. So, for example, I listened to this podcast called Earn Your Leisure. I think most of us know it. And they talked about how the Black Fund is always the smallest fund in any organization. So, for example, if Microsoft has, for example, 100 million that they're in funds that they're putting in startups, a Black Fund is going to get like 2 million of that. So you can imagine the amount of applications going into just 2 million worth of funding. It's very unlikely that you're going to get any funding. And so there's a lot of hype of, you know, there's so much funds for Black people and Black founders and Black women, and they're blowing it out in social media, but the amount of funding is this small. So the independent thinking is like, how do I make sure that I'm not being confined in that 2%? Who do I need to talk to in order not to be put in that 2%? How do I push back so I'm not put in that 2% and I can actually take advantage of the $98 million of funding for all startups? So I think that's definitely a deeper level of independent thinking, but yeah, I just don't look at things like in a hopeful manner all the time. I always have like a skeptic eye to things, because there's always an agenda. And as long as I know someone's agenda, whether it's good or bad, I feel like I can trust them. But if I still don't know what that agenda is, it just creates a lot of distrust.
Interesting.
It's a lot.
Yeah. I find it very, very interesting for personally, obviously, because one of the lessons that has been, I read this book some years back, 10 lessons to learn over life. And one of them is that life will always teach you a particular lesson until you learn it, right? And I think one lesson that life has been trying to teach me since COVID is that you can't expect you from other people. And the reason why I share that is because of what, like, it's in line with what you shared about being skeptical or applying some level of skepticism to, the relationships and interactions you're having with people. Um, my personal story, I came from a privileged background. Things went pretty smoothly for me growing up and for my siblings. However, one thing I appreciate my father and my parents for doing is that they always had us around, lack, for lack of a better term. Amidst the abundance we were enjoying, there was lack around us, so that we get some perspective. The reason why I share that is, as someone who had such abundance growing up, I tended to be very naive. Just, can we all just get along? But life is teaching me, as I ventured out into, certain things, I'm coming to realize that not everyone is thinking from that perspective. So, like you said, see things like more like a chess move. There's an agenda behind one thing or the other, and just be mindful of that so you don't get hurt.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that resonated deeply with me, and that's why I wanted to share that.
Yeah, I can definitely get into a rabbit hole of this. Another book that gives really good perspective about developments in some of our home countries. The Stealth War is a really good book.
Stealth War?
Yeah, Stealth War. That gives really good perspective. There's some other things that I've read also, like the $1 Trillion Coach, really giving perspective of the people that you listen to also can really determine your life.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just family members and friends. In our space where our careers, we usually tend to get advice and have all these people we lean on to. Not everyone knows what they're doing. Some of them are placed there because it's a job that was open. And it makes them feel nice to give you advice. But they may not have the best advice.
Best advice or best intentions for you. So it's yeah. We could go on a rabbit hole, but since this is recorded, I'm just gonna, hold my thoughts to myself.
Oh gosh. Yeah, I've been tying my tongue as much as it doesn't seem like it.
Yeah. I get that vibe. You come across as someone that has seen some things that, could callous your heart. But it's good to see that you're still, walking in your light. So just for what it's worth, I commend you on keeping on.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
So you had started while you were answering, they started mentioning how, your perspective on family, what the natural idea of a family looks like. It's that perspective has shifted over time, right? Makes me think of, or makes me want to ask this next question, which is, what advice would you give to young Africans who, either want to follow a similar path as you, or, would be inspired by your story? What advice would you give them?
Wow, are you ready for this advice? I don't think they're ready for this advice.
That's even more reason why they should be.
I would say the partner that you pick, choose wisely.
Okay.
That's one of the biggest decisions you'll ever make in your life. Not any career decision, it's usually your significant other. They can definitely make or break your life. So definitely look at that. I'd also say establish yourself first before anyone. I know there's a huge pressure, especially for us as Africans, to take care of our families, to send money back home. Someone broke their leg, send money. Someone got a cold, send money. Someone, had an argument, send money. There's always something that requires you to send money. And you'll find yourself in a situation where you don't have anywhere else to go. And you're like, I had all these opportunities and I've worked so hard. Why am I not where I'm supposed to be? Just take care of yourself first. I promise you, those who are upset about that, they'll either come around or not, and that's okay. But you have to make sure that you're establishing yourself. Get the car, get a good car. It doesn't have to be expensive. Be able to move around, to look for those opportunities, to explore places. Get that house, save for that house, save, put that deposit down. You may not have any furniture inside. That's okay. You'll get it later. The house will be filled over time. It's now yours. I would say definitely just make sure that you're establishing yourself first before anybody else. And then once your cup is full, now you can pour into others.
I took that advice. I took that advice wholeheartedly. Can you share a similarly significant experience that you had that ended up being or having a profound impact on your journey?
Other than everything else that I mentioned?
Those seem to be very pivotal, but I'm saying like in the moment, it didn't seem like a significant thing or even like a challenge or anything. It was just something that happened. But in hindsight, we're like, oh, wow, that happened for a reason.
Yeah. I would say when I was cleaning homes too, I was also, at one point I was selling cars and I worked really hard. I was a car sales girl. It was either me by myself or like another girl in the team. And we worked our butts off. But there was this one night where the manager was rude for no reason. We got into it. And I said, you know what, F this. I'm getting another job. And I was like, should I go to another car dealership? Because I know how to sell cars. And I said, well, let me maybe not do that. Let me apply to something different where I can sit down and not be burnt outside all day in, driving hot cars in Arizona. And I applied to be a sales rep for a tech company. That has definitely completely pivoted my life, for sure. And I was selling cars because I was a mechanical engineer. I wanted to build cars, so I wanted to be close and learn and all this. And one time I just said, you know what, maybe it's time for me to just like have a desk job. And that really completely just changed everything. I didn't even realize how fast technology changes. For it to change every 6 months was absolutely wild to me, because even at that time I had like a 3-year-old Android phone. So it was mind blowing for me.
I hope you're still an Android user. I know.
Oh, I transitioned. I'm sorry, no. Android community.
Let's end this right here.
iPhone user now.
It was nice knowing you. Thank you for your time. This is going definitely off the record, but I am anti-iPhones. I don't know why. I've never spent $1 on it, and I don't intend to.
Peer pressure made me use an iPhone. Every friend of mine in the tech space was like, oh God, she's turning green again.
That's another part. That's another part of that like, for lack of a better term, pisses me off. It's like they make you iPhone users make us feel like we're not connected to the best technology out there.
Hey, don't blame us, blame Apple. Oh man. But it's crazy because like Android phones like Samsung specifically, that's what I had before. They have like really amazing tech that comes out before iPhones. I think Apple just is so much better with the messaging and marketing. They make it such a big deal. Like the charger, like, okay, sure, you have a different charger now. Samsung had the same and has probably more technology that you're going to coin and make it like it's, a big deal 3 years from now. But yeah, I think it's only like peer pressure of like the FaceTiming and the blue bubble and all these things that make me transition. However, I would say also, because a lot of users are iPhone users, we needed to learn how to use iPhones so that we can build a really good app for them.
Okay. Look at you being purposeful.
Purposeful with my phone.
Right? You had to find a purposeful reason to stay with the iPhone. That's the only pass I'm giving you for that.
Oh, okay, I'll take it.
All right, so let's talk about vision and the future. What is where do you see your journey taking you? I really don't like to ask these questions because I'm someone that I'm not bounded by time. I don't like to bound myself to time. Hence I don't have SMART goals. I have intentions and have daily systems that I use to work towards those intentions. But what would you say personally and for the Clyn team? Where do you see yourselves in 5 to 10 years?
I'll definitely be back home in Kenya. Like I think a lot of professional Africans here will be investing more in their home countries, and it's going to look different from what we've seen before. Our aunties and our moms and dads were sending money back home and saying, make sure you like the house gets built and finished, right? And sometimes that doesn't happen. But I think for our generation, it'll be a different way of investing where we are actually back home and building solutions. I think that's how the next generation is investing in our home countries. I definitely want to be part of that, and I want to be at the forefront of that. That's where I see myself in 5 years, is really being part of building a massive tech system or tech ecosystem in African countries.
Interesting. I like that, and I completely agree with you. When it's definitely going to be a different. For one, I think we would be more inclined to go back home. I think we'll be more inclined to, and the reason being is that there's going to be. Granted, we are more purposeful and independent minded about what we are doing as Africans, and not being, what I say, what's the word? Not compromising because of where the money is coming from. I feel if we can stick to our guns, it's going to be a different landscape in the near future. So how do you see your personal story, time, or intersecting or affecting that larger perspective or that larger narrative?
I think it gives me a lot of perspective with like seeing things before they happen. I think we have a big strength as Africans who live in the US to see when something that's being applied or implemented in our countries is not good for us. And it's easy for us to say, whoa, we've seen this before. We need to find a better solution. I think that's the biggest impact. And then also the connections that we have would really help accelerate whatever that we're trying to build in our home countries. So for example, we both work in tech. We have so much connections in different kind of tech companies. It's so much easier for us to connect our teams in Kenya, for example. I always connect my teams to mentors from Techstars, from, to resources from AWS, things that they would not even dream of thinking that they would have access to. They easily have access to it. And over time, it's not even a long time, but you can even see it in months where someone's career literally accelerates because they just have access to those things and they build solutions that are better, which means everybody else benefits quite a bit. So yeah, that's how I see it. I definitely see myself as a connector of two different worlds to to bring solutions that work for us.
I love that. So I'll ask this last question, then we'll go into some fairly, um, fairly relaxed series of questions.
Okay.
So the slogan for African Mavericks is "Bet on your truth." Bet on your truth. When you hear that, what comes to mind, and how would you explain that to a younger sibling?
That's amazing. Bet on your truth. Man, I think it's self-explanatory. That makes me think of, wow, that makes me think of my nephew and my niece. Because the way they think, the way they process things is so different. And sometimes I could tell, like, some people, it's in our culture where we just make fun of people because we poke jokes at each other. And sometimes I could see like my niece getting, a little hurt about it. And I have to like interject and remind her, like, I really like how you thought about that, just to remind her, like, oh, you're not going crazy. I think bet on your truth also is like just trusting that whatever gift that you have, it's not a crazy thing. Lean into that gift completely, wholeheartedly. It may look different, it may sound different, just lean into it because you don't know what bigger purpose that you're actually achieving, what impact you're going to make. So I would say that is really just leaning onto your gift.
I love that, and thank you for the answer. So now into some fairly relaxed questions. I say fairly relaxed because I thought they were easy questions until my last guest was like, "Nah, these are not easy questions." But it's a bit outside the box. Let's go. So if you could describe your life journey in one song or one fruit,
One fruit?
yeah, what would it be and why?
Oh my gosh. I would say a passion fruit. I would say a passion. You know how passion fruit is sweet, but it also has this sour taste, but it's also good.
Mm.
Yeah, that's it.
So it's if that's the why, because it's sweet and sour at the same time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like when founders say you start liking the taste of your own blood. Have you heard that? Yeah. Yeah, I would say that's definitely it. It's like it's a sweet journey to have, but it has its ups and downs. So yeah. Passion fruit for sure.
Passion fruit. I'm creating a tally. So far, Apple is in the lead.
Apple has been the most picked fruit.
Yeah.
I'm curious why. Why is that?
If I remember the last guest that said Apple was because it wasn't so sweet, but it was very necessary. Like, you could it had the ability to, I don't know if this is true or not, but I'm not doing my research, but she said the effects of Apple is better than taking coffee in the morning.
That's true.
Yeah, so yeah. But it's the most common answer was it's because it's not so sweet, but it's very valuable.
I like that.
All right, so imagine if your life was a book. What would this chapter of what would you call this current chapter?
Gosh, that's a good question. I would call it the product. Actually, I would call the book, and I've actually wanted to write this book for a long time. I'd call it I'm Not Alone.
Okay. I'm not alone. And this chapter will be called
This chapter, the transition.
The Transition. Okay, interesting. All right. So, if you could witness any event of the past, present, or future, what would it be and why?
Witness any events. So events that I've never been in, or
Mhm.
oh, oh, that's a good one. Oh, I would love to be in Diana Ross's concert. That looked like a lot of fun. I see videos about
Right.
it and I'm like, wow, they must be having a great time.
Any
It looked like
particular
a
one?
big cookout.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I would love to be there.
Interesting. I think you're a big fan of Diana Ross.
I think it's because of our like sharing our first names. So
Mm,
I'm more inclined to like learn about her. Uh, but I think yeah, I would say I'm a fan of her.
okay. Are you a fan of Princess Diana as well?
She was amazing. I am also a fan of her. I think she made a massive impact that I don't think anyone is going to top for a long time.
True. At least anyone in that position, right?
Yeah.
I agree with you. So, how would you describe the color of your journey so far?
Hmm. Can we pick more than one color?
Go ahead.
Uh, I would say white, red, and black.
Okay. Why?
Uh, there have been really, really bright days.
Mm,
And then there have been days that have been challenging. And there have been days I've been feeling really powerful. Yeah, I would say like there's a like a I'm being chiseled into someone right now. And I'm finally understanding that I'm being chiseled into someone better right now. Uh, and I feel like that color would be uh, red and black for sure.
Now let's go a step deeper in that. If you could pick one of those colors and describe it to someone that can't see, how would you describe that?
Uh, hmm. I would say for black, I would say a quiet power. And then red, I would say a very loud power.
Interesting. Very interesting. Quiet power. I like that. Um, but it's very vague for the person that can't see, so they're gonna have to make sense of what that means. All right. So last of the unconventional questions is if life is a journey, what kind of vehicle are you traveling in, and what does that say about your approach to life?
Um, Good question. Maybe I would say like a RAV4.
A Rav4.
Yeah.
Please tell me why.
You gotta have the four-wheel drive and the good tires uh, to really drive through this journey because there are some places that are not going to be nice roads. Sometimes you have to make those roads yourself. You have to be equipped for that. I would say a RAV4.
Okay, interesting. So that means your approach to, if I get you right, your approach to, and correct me if I'm wrong, your current approach to life is just preparing yourself for whatever road whatever condition the road is going to be.
Yeah.
Okay. Like that. Love that. But before I ask the question from the last guest, is there any question you would have wanted me to ask that I didn't ask you?
Oh, you've been amazing with questions. I've enjoyed this. Some interviews is all about work and all about what's your startup doing and all this. And I think the independent thinking has really led to a very genuine and organic conversation. So it has been great.
Thank you. Appreciate that. And I'm glad to hear that, because the vibe I got from you the initial minutes of the conversation was like, I'm here to talk about being a founder, and I was a bit what's the word I'm looking for? I was like, how am I going to get her to relax that? We're glad to hear that, you enjoyed the conversation, and I take that whole as it. Thank you.
Yeah, it was great. It was awesome.
Thank you. So the question from the last guest: do you think it's really possible to be in love multiple times in a lifetime?
Yes, it is.
Okay. You want to speak more on that?
I was in a very long-term relationship, and it took a lot out of me, for sure. And for a long time, I said I would never love the same way. I just said, like, I just don't have it in me. And then recently, I met someone who genuinely showed love, completely genuinely. There's nothing that they wanted out of me. There was no malicious agenda. And the more they poured into me, the more I was able to pour into them. And it reminded me that it wasn't the relationship that was making me love and show love. It was me. It all came from within me. And also, it is unfair to say you're not going to love multiple times. There's so many people who do need that love. It doesn't have to be non-platonic. It could be platonic. It could be family members. It could be friends. There's so many people who, and especially at this time, need a lot of love. I think if we think independently and realize that love is not like a little commodity that is constantly dwindling, and it's actually a renewable energy, we can understand that we can definitely show love to a lot more people. We don't have to be stingy with it.
Thank you for such a lovely answer. I'm not going to add anything to that, because I think, yeah, that was a beautiful and lovely answer. So Diana, this brings us to the end of our conversation.
Already?
So there you have it. You've come to the end of the conversation. Pretty insightful one, right? I hope you're able to get some value from it. And if you did, please go ahead and like the video, share your thoughts in the comments, or subscribe to the channel. And most preferably, I'll ask that you share this with a friend, because I believe that's one of the best ways this channel is gonna grow, by word of mouth. So if you got some value, please share this with a friend who you feel would appreciate this video as well, and the conversation. And thank you as you do, and until the next time we see, I wish you more life and more blessings.